believe it's time for us to wake up as individuals and also as a society to the inequalities and resulting suffering all around us. So many disparities exist in both the ways we live and in the ways we die. Based on a lifetime of relevant education and experiences, my guest today challenges us to grow in wisdom, love, and social justice. Hi, this is Marlena Fiol from Becoming Who We Truly Are, a YouTube channel that deepens our understanding of who we are, but also who we can become. If you find value in this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. It makes a big difference. I'm honored to introduce today's guest, Dr. LaVera Crawley. LaVera is internationally known in the field of medicine and ethics for her work on reducing healthcare disparities in palliative and end-of-life care. Have you ever longed to make that kind of difference in the world? After a 16-plus year career at Stanford as an empirical bioethicist, Dr. Crawley began a new career in spiritual companionship, bringing together her work in medicine, ethics, social justice, teaching, research, and public health with her long-standing interest in spirituality. She's currently the Palliative Care Chaplain at the Alta Summit Medical Center and a certified educator for hospital chaplains. She's also chair of the board of Father Richard Rohr's Center for Action and Contemplation. If you'd like to listen to my hour-long interview with Dr. Crawley, I've posted the link to the website below. At the end of this episode, we'll provide recommendations for additional material on dying and the process of awakening at the end of life. LaVera, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm quite honored.
LaVera, in a recent interview, you stated that the work of training chaplains was the culmination of many paths in your life. As a way of introducing yourself to our listeners, what were some of those paths, and how is the work of training chaplains the culmination?
Hospital chaplaincy called on who I was as a trained physician to really understand disease and illness and hospital systems. It called upon that spiritual part of me that by this time I'd also started developing. I went to seminary and took classes. I had discovered the Living School of Action and Contemplation, which is Father Richard Rohr's school out of Albuquerque. And I had done all this sort of inner training. And all of those worlds came together in serving chaplains, in serving as a chaplain and serving patients. I think what I had missed most in the academic world was that direct one-to-one connection with another human being through their suffering and through their joys, and chaplaincy gave that back to me.
Dr. Ira Byock, another guest on this podcast, I believe you know him.
Yes.
He said that the dying stage of life, and you have spent a lot of time with people during that stage of life, that this dying stage holds remarkable possibilities and moments of meaning and growth. In fact, he's argued that the adage that people die as they have lived is only half true. He says that even as we die, we can grow well beyond how we've lived. Do you agree with that?
Of course. I came to know that intimately when I was diagnosed with a life-threatening, very serious immune disease called sarcoidosis. I can remember going for a series of scans, and in the dressing room, suddenly feeling like something was just pushing me against the wall and saying, pay attention, wake up. This is what life is. Life is facing death. And that moment changed everything. I saw everything differently. Everything was much more precious in life. Connections that I had lost, friends that had sort of gone by the wayside, I reconnected. Yeah, so I totally agree with.
And
with
if
what
Ira were part of this conversation right now, I think he would add that the language, again, the issue of language, that he speaks of dying rather than death, and that the process of dying is part of living, and that also is linguistically important how we talk about that. The cases in his book Dying Well show us that some people, in fact, at the end of life do grow and have remarkable moments of meaning and possibilities that they didn't have during their lifetime, but others do not. So it's not a universal phenomenon. I'm wondering if you can speak a bit to what we can do, how we can show up for that meaning and growth to manifest as we journey into the dying stage.
It's a process of waking up. And there's so many things that we need to wake up to. I mean, right now in our American society, but also globally, we're waking up to the realization that we do not live in an equitable society. We're waking up to the vulnerability of life with this pandemic that's accepting us. So some of us aren't ready to wake up. Some of us, I mean, all the deep spiritual traditions teach about levels of consciousness, and that's another way of talking about this. So your question then is, how do we get people to wake up?
Yeah, great way to frame the question.
Yeah.
Or let me put it more personally. How can I wake up? What must I do to wake up?
Well, just the fact that you're having these podcasts, the work that you do, you've already done that. Waking up doesn't necessarily mean you have to know all the facts and learn all the history and all of that. I think particularly bringing it back to this death and the dying process.
Yeah.
That, and this is going to sound very simplistic, but if I had to reduce my religious or spiritual beliefs and faith into one simple thing, it is learning how to love.
Yeah.
So I think that you don't have to have this grand epiphany at that moment of death. You just have to hold on to love.
Yeah.
Where was it in your life? Where was it missing? And grieve that, and to just be in the midst of love where it was and it wasn't, but just understanding that this whole foundation of existence is based on our capacity to open to love.
My spiritual teacher and your colleague, Father Richard Rohr, also talks about the need to embrace and move through our brokenness. And I've certainly experienced this in my own life. In my new book, Nothing Bad Between Us, I describe my brokenness as a major source of healing. My question is this: is it always necessary to fall, to break, before we can experience true healing and wholeness?
I don't know if it's always. I don't want to speak in those sort of extremes. I'm sure there are lives well lived in which there wasn't the extremes of grief, and let's go back to this idea of life and death and the dying process. That is an inevitable thing that's going to happen to all of us.
Yeah.
And there is loss in that. And so how do we hold the loss of our loved ones who have gone before us, the loss of as we are leaving? When I got my diagnosis, I had to really reorganize my priorities and let go of some things. And there was grief in that. So I doubt if there's anyone who escapes it completely. And then there are those who live it horrendously every moment of their life. I think of refugees. I think of people who are in war-torn areas. I think of those in extreme poverty. So do we need that extreme to wake up? Probably not. And we'll still experience some degree of it at some level of our life.
Yeah.
Now, having said with that as a given, how do we use that to reach that point of love, of understanding love, of embracing love, or waking up to the suffering of others. If we are willing to sit with that difficult pain, it's not life is knocking on the door saying, wake up, wake up. And if you don't wake up, it'll come again eventually.
Yes. What can you share with us about how we can more fully show up for others and maybe more importantly for ourselves in that liminal space that we'll all pass through someday?
Denial is actually a very important process that we have to go through.
Yeah.
Because it's saying it is the doorway into the liminal. And it may say, I'm not quite ready to go through that door yet. Mm-hmm. It may just be saying that. It's not saying, I don't want to go there. It's not true. It's saying, I'm not quite ready to go there. I want to reframe denial as, this is what I can hold right now. Will you hold it with me? Yeah. And not push me further than I need to go or that I can go right now. And if I can trust that so this is those who are companioning, if I can trust that you're just going to be with me exactly where I am right now, then maybe when I'm ready to take that next step where you want me to go, then you'll still be there with me.
Oh, that's lovely. So, LaVera, if there were one last thing you'd like our listeners to hear, what would that last thing be?
Well, when you invited me to speak with you and your audience, the topic was service. And I thought about the fact that my life has been about service. But I thought about what guides me to do service. What is that spark that makes me wake up and say, okay, how am I going to serve today? And I think it really revolves around understanding purpose. I am truly guided by purpose. And when I'm lost, it usually means I've stopped being in touch with my purpose. So my invitation to listeners is to make sure that you understand how do you see your purpose of being alive, of being on this planet at this time, and what are your guiding principles. One of my early mentors, Rachel Naomi Remen, taught me that there were all the religious traditions can be summarized into two ideas about purpose, and that our purpose in life is to grow in wisdom and to learn to love better. So my mantra now is not only to grow in wisdom and to learn to love better, but to steward justice.
This has been a rich and meaningful conversation. LaVera, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Well, again, thank you for the honor of being able to speak with you. I'm so humbled, and thank you.
If you found value in this episode, please do give it a thumbs up. Also, please post any comments or questions you may have. I'm very interested and I'll respond each day. For example, how do you feel about the kind of work that Dr. Crawley is doing? In addition, just so you know, I'll be posting a new episode of this YouTube show each Tuesday at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. For further information on spiritual companionship, we recommend the following resources. First, a TEDx presentation by Lisa Miller on depression and spiritual awakening as two sides of the same door. Also, check out my interview with Dr. Ira Byock on improving care through the end of life. And for a look at my own path to forgiveness and reconciliation with my father before he died, we recommend my memoir, which was released in 2020 by Mango Publishing, Nothing Bad Between Us. The web addresses for each of these resources are in the show notes. And remember, we are together on this journey.